Coming up on Locked on Dodgers, the Dodgers got walked off again by the Reds. This one was maybe less painful than the day before. I don't know. They were both pretty bad. Another time blew a big lead. One reason that this one was maybe less painful is because we kind of saw it coming because of who was on the mound. Noah Syndergaard pitched for the Dodgers for probably the last time ever. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Major League debuts of Jonny DeLuca and Nick Robertson, and that those actually went pretty okay. And a lot of other stuff to unpack from this game. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked on Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked on Dodgers, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked on Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked on Dodgers. Or even better, go and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My co-host is Vince Samperio. We are doing a split episode today, so I will be with you for the first half of the episode. Vince will be with you for the second half. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb. And when you enter promo code LockedOnMLB, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. With that said, let's jump right into this episode. The Dodgers lost. Noah Syndergaard was bad again. He gave up 6 runs in 3 innings. The bullpen was tasked with getting through the final 6 innings of the game, and they did pretty well until it was actually Evan Phillips who blew this one, gave up an infield single, and then a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 9th inning to lose the game. Lots to talk about with Syndergaard. Vince is going to cover most of that because last time Noah Syndergaard was terrible, it was me doing a solo episode. And Vince felt like, it's not fair to me to have to cover the Noah Syndergaard garbage every single time. So if you want my thoughts on Noah Syndergaard, honestly, they haven't changed much from, looks like a week ago today, June 1st, if you want to go check out that episode. I said then the only thing that has happened is it's intensified, and now I think it really is the end for Noah Syndergaard. Vince will cover that. Dave Roberts kind of laid the groundwork for an IL stint on Syndergaard. And my only thing I'll say is I think we've probably seen the last of Syndergaard unless the IL stint magically adds 6 miles an hour to his fastball. Other than that, I think he's done. But I want to talk about, there wasn't much great news about this game. The offense had another good game for the first 3 innings and then kind of got shut down after the Reds pitcher was awful the first 3 innings. Then he actually made it through 5 2/3. And he gave up 6 runs, but he gave them the length that Syndergaard wasn't able to give the Dodgers. And then the bullpen for the Reds came in and did a good job. Still, the Dodgers were right in it. It was tied 6-6 until the bottom of the 9th. I'll cover more about that bottom of the 9th in the second segment. But I want to talk about the Major League debuts of Jonny DeLuca and Nick Robertson. DeLuca went 0 for 2. He had 2 lineouts, both hit the ball well both times, and then he had a walk that ended up leading to nothing. But other than, watching Elly De La Cruz for the Reds the last 2 days in his first 2 career games and just tearing the cover off the ball, any Major League debut is going to pale in comparison to what De La Cruz has done. But Jonny DeLuca played well, and it was fun to see him. He looks comfortable at the plate, and he did hit the ball hard. And so we know the plan is for him to play mostly against left-handed pitching. I'm kind of hoping that it's not solely against left-handed pitching just because he's definitely better against lefties. But in the minors this year, I'm looking at his splits. Yeah, he's got an 1104 OPS against lefties, but he's got a 905 OPS against righties. And so even if you adjust for the major leagues or whatever, he's still been good against righties, just a lot better against lefties. And so obviously it comes down a lot of things. Miguel Rojas left the game with a stiff neck. And so if Rojas is gone on the IL again, which is a possibility, maybe that opens up a little more playing time for DeLuca because Chris Taylor has to play shortstop more often, or because Mookie Betts has to play shortstop. So there's another outfield spot. maybe he gets some at bats against righties, but even if it's just against lefties, I'm excited to see what he could do. He looks like a ball player. We talked the other day about how he makes good contact. He doesn't strike out much, which is a big deal. And I think that could be pretty valuable to this team. He's also fast, so a lot of potential there. Nick Robertson was a guy who we mentioned that he had gotten called up, but we didn't really talk much about him. And it's kind of an under the radar thing. It's two guys who were drafted by the Dodgers in 2019, both debuted on Wednesday, and Robertson looked great. He struck out 3 in 2 perfect innings, struck out De La Cruz looking on 3 pitches. His first time, the first batter he faced in the big leagues, got 2 strikeouts in his second inning. Looked great. Obviously, it's not going to be 2 perfect innings every time he pitches, but he looked really good, and his stuff was good. It seemed to me like he gets a disproportionate amount of batters looking at pitches that are well within the zone, just fastballs in the zone. So I don't know if it's deception, if it's spin rate, something, but the pitch that he struck out De La Cruz looking on, maybe he was just guessing wrong, but it was not even really near the edge of the plate. It wasn't quite down the middle, but it was fully in the strike zone, and De La Cruz was just frozen. And so, if there's something to that, Robertson has a 13.1 strikeouts per 9 in the minor leagues, only 2.5 walks per 9, which is awesome. Doesn't give up many homers, doesn't give up many hits. He's been dominant in the minor leagues this year. And we saw that. And it's a great time to be a Dodgers reliever coming up, because there's a real chance if you're actually good. And Nick Robertson is different from some of the other guys they've shuttled back and forth. Doesn't mean they won't shuttle him back and forth. He has options, which means he probably will get shuttled back and forth. But he's different in that he's an actual prospect. Taylor Scott is like, okay, there's a guy we can call up, and then we'll set him down and maybe DFA him if we need the 40-man roster spot at some point. Nick Robertson isn't going anywhere as far as the 40-man roster goes. When they made the decision to put him on the 40-man roster, that was a long-term decision. And so I think he does have a chance to stick in the big leagues. And, you could start to picture a world if Robertson can, I'm not expecting him to come and be a super high leverage reliever immediately, but having a quality arm there, and if the starting pitchers can get to where they're actually giving 6 innings or at least 5 innings, so the bullpen only needs to cover 3 or 4 innings, that would be awesome. And Robertson, I think, could play a role in that, where he is kind of that, a guy you can depend on to pitch a good 6th inning. 6th inning, whoever's batting in the 6th inning is going to get up at least one more time. And so, unless it's high leverage, because of the score or the situation, you don't necessarily want your best guy going in the 6th inning, knowing the same guys will be up in the 9th inning. Robertson, I could see filling that role, or filling the 7th inning after those guys and facing the 6, 7, 8 hitters in the 7th inning, some sort of role like that. And again, I've watched baseball long enough to know that sometimes guys are really good in their first career game and then they struggle. It happens. Stephen Fife comes to mind. There's plenty of guys who that happens with. So I'm not necessarily saying Nick Robertson Hall of Fame right now, but he looked good. And it wasn't just the results. The stuff looked good. Stuff looked like it'll play. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for Jonny DeLuca. I think there's potential there for these guys to actually make an impact. With Trace Thompson out, DeLuca seems like he has a good chance to stay on the roster, especially if Rojas goes on the IL. They're going to have to find another position player in addition to DeLuca. And at that point, DeLuca seems like he's got a roster spot and he's going to have a pretty long runway to prove himself. And that's exciting for me to see what he can do. It was exciting to see him, even though he didn't get that first career hit yet. That just means it's coming. It's fun to see his family there. It's fun to see Robertson's family, huge cheering section. A lot of fun for that. And so, yeah, the game sucked. The game was exciting at the beginning, and then it was like, oh yeah, Syndergaard's pitching, and at the end it was awful. But there were some bright spots about it, and I'm excited for those little things. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm just going to spend my last couple of minutes talking about addressing some comments on yesterday's episode. The first walk-off loss for the Dodgers in this series, and the one that is being blamed a lot on Dave Roberts, and just some of the comments I saw on that. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. All right, Bird Dogs, we've told you all about them. It's shorts. They have pants too. I've only seen the shorts, and I really like the shorts. And so, if you're a shorts guy, they also make joggers that I'm sure are awesome too. But the shorts, they've got a built-in liner. So, the easy way of saying that is built-in underwear. Everything about bird dogs reminds me of The Simpsons, I guess. Have you seen the episode? It's like a flashback episode of the 80s. And one of the guys who Homer hangs out with at the bar says, "Hey, you hear about that new internet?" And he's talking about netting that goes inside your shorts. And then later he gets scared and says, "Oh, I just logged on to my internet." It's funny. Anyway, Bird Dogs has the inner lining that's awesome, and the material. My son was wearing his Bird Dogs today, and I said, "Logan, come here. Let me feel your shorts." And so he came over, and I was feeling it's very, very comfortable, stretchy in all the right ways. Not like it doesn't feel like gym shorts, but it's got that stretch to it, so it's as comfortable as gym shorts. But they look really, really nice. And I told you, my son wore them to his sister's high school graduation, with a polo shirt, and he looked like he was dressed up. So if you're looking for shorts that look awesome, feel great, and you want to get a free tumbler, we got it for you. Just go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb, enter promo code lockedonmlb for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. All right, I am back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. If you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through email or social media or whatever. Vince will give you all that contact info at the end. Also want to remind you, you can catch the hometown radio broadcast of every Dodger game, including today's series finale day game against the Reds on Sirius XM or the SXM app. If you, like I said, today's a day game. It's at 9:30 a.m. So you're probably going to be stuck at work. You want to listen, just pull up the SXM app, search for Dodgers, or if you happen to be in your car, it'll be on channel 175 on your Sirius XM radio. And with that said, let's jump back in. I mentioned I wanted to touch on a couple comments on yesterday's episode. We got a lot of comments on the YouTube video of yesterday's episode, and I really do appreciate that. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, and that's okay. We don't have to agree. We say at the end of every episode, you don't have to agree, you just have to listen. I do think that a lot of these comments came before people had listened or watched the episode, because they're either saying things that we already said or not acknowledging that we disagreed with them, which is okay too. But one of the things I saw multiple people say was they should have left Evan Phillips in. He only threw 11 pitches in the 8th inning, should have left him in for the 9th inning. And I want to play out a hypothetical situation for you. Let's say Evan Phillips does stay in the game on Tuesday night, which modern relief pitchers mostly don't go 2 innings. That's just how it is. And there have been times when Dave Roberts has tried to get guys, what he calls an up down, come back out for a 2nd inning. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They try to do that sometimes, but the first game of a series, knowing that you might need Evan Phillips again, there's plenty of reasons not to send him back out. But let's just pretend that they did. Send him back out there for the 9th inning. Maybe he gets out of it, and then Caleb Ferguson loses the game in the 10th inning. Maybe, even if they win that game, if Evan Phillips comes in and holds that 2-run lead and they win on Tuesday, great. That's already better than what happened. Then we get to Wednesday's game and Evan Phillips is not available. And so it's somebody else. Let's say it's, Caleb Ferguson, who pitches the 9th inning and gives up the walk-off home run here. You can imagine people saying, why did Dave Roberts use Evan Phillips for 2 innings yesterday? You don't think Caleb Ferguson can hold a 2-run lead, or you don't think Shelby Miller can hold a 2-run lead? Like, it's a good illustration of how managing a baseball team is a no-win proposition, because you will always be criticized because we can never know what would have happened. If Evan Phillips pitches the 9th and he gets the win, the Dodgers would be better off with 1 win than the 0 wins that they had. I think we saw on Wednesday night that it's no guarantee that Evan Phillips would have gotten the win, because Evan Phillips gave up 2-run home run on Wednesday night. Even the best relievers give up home runs. And so you imagine that if Evan Phillips had given up that home run last night, so they tie the game, and Dodgers end up losing that game, and Phillips is unavailable for this game, there's so much second guessing that's possible. And for me, what I try to avoid second guessing. That's why when I look back at the 2019 NLDS, it's easy for me to say, this isn't second guessing, this is first guessing, because I and many other people said do not have Clayton Kershaw pitch the 8th inning in that game 5 against the Nationals. That was first guessing, and it did end up poorly, and it cost the Dodgers a series. Some things are just bad decisions. But most decisions that managers make and most decisions that Dave Roberts makes, the ones that are up for criticism, aren't right or wrong. They are, I've talked about this a lot. I know some of you are probably tired of hearing about it. It's a spectrum. It's a continuum. And so very few decisions, at least the ones that get talked about, are 100% right or 100% wrong. They're usually in the 60-40 range. And a manager's job is to give his team the best chance to win, which means to pick the 60% chance over the 40% decision. And the problem with the 60% decision is it's still going to not work sometimes. And so, in my opinion, taking out Phillips after the 8th inning on Tuesday was the 60% decision. It was, to the extent that there's right and wrong, it was the right decision, meaning it was more right than the alternate decision. I understand quibbling with bringing in Ferguson there to face a bunch of righties, although, as we mentioned yesterday, Ferguson didn't give up hits to the righties. He walked them, which is not something he's done much this year. It was a different problem. It's like saying, I try to come up with a good analogy, but when you are worried about one thing happening and something else happens and you say, see, I told you. No, that's not what happened with Caleb Ferguson. He walked a bunch of dudes, and argue about that one. That's fine. But leaving Evan Phillips in for the 9th inning, I think would have been the 40% decision, the wrong decision, to the extent that there's right and wrong. And I know we all get passionate about it. I do think it's worth noting that I think Dave Roberts is focused on winning in the long term. And yeah, going out of first place sucked. Dodgers need to battle back. Winning the division is no sure thing this year. Last year it was. This year it's not, and that's okay. But I do think Dave Roberts wants long-term success. And so if Caleb Ferguson was able to learn something for that experience, if it had been successful, if Caleb Ferguson comes in and gets the save there, then Ferguson has more confidence going against righties. I think there's some of that. Even with Ferguson being left out there to die, there's something he can learn from that. And if it makes the Dodgers a better team long-term, I think that's a trade-off that Dave Roberts would make. And I think that's a valuable trade-off. It doesn't mean it will necessarily work, but I think that's a lot of the thought process that goes into that. And yeah, I mean, anytime the Dodgers lose, we as Dodger fans are going to be upset. I really do believe, somebody on YouTube said managers can't win games, but they can lose games. I agree with that to an extent. I just don't think it happens as often as fans say it does. This was, the fact is Caleb Ferguson is a major league pitcher who has gotten major league hitters out a lot of times. And if he had done that, the Dodgers would have won that game. And, I'm glad that this game on Wednesday can't be blamed on Dave Roberts. It was on Noah Syndergaard. And that's what Vince is going to talk about when he gets here. Mostly Noah Syndergaard, because chances are the Noah Syndergaard era is over in Los Angeles. And I, for one, look closely. If you're on YouTube, no tears. Nothing against Noah Syndergaard personally. I'm just, I almost took a video as he was walking off the mound so that I could have video of him walking off the mound for the last time in a Dodger uniform, because I do think he's done. But like I said, Vince will be along to talk about that. So I'll hand it over to him. Vince will be along in a minute.
Thanks, Jeff. And thanks to you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Dodgers wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube or on SiriusXM or the SXM app. All you got to do is search Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to listen to the home broadcast of any game on SiriusXM or the SXM app, just search Dodgers. Can't watch, listen on SiriusXM or the SXM app, just search Dodgers. Yo, Dodger fans, Vince here to close out the episode. And as Jeff alluded to, I'll be talking Noah Syndergaard. I didn't want Jeff to have to talk about him again, just because what else are you going to say? He only got worse from the last time we talked. Jeff had to talk about him. So, yeah, Noah Syndergaard yesterday, 3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, 3 strikeouts. I mean, no walks, I guess, is the standout performance there. But after the game, Dave Roberts basically alluded to giving Noah Syndergaard a reset, which means probably an IL stint, which is what we've been saying, phantom IL stint, what we've been saying, just because he's not necessarily hurt. Dave Roberts did happen to mention the blister from a while ago, and then I guess he broke a fingernail yesterday. And I think he's just mentioning that because they're going to put him on the injured list, even though he's not necessarily hurt. And that's pretty much what we had said. If this start didn't go well, is that he's going to go on the injured list for the simple fact, like, the Dodgers aren't in a position right now, health wise, to just cut bait with him. And honestly, it's been a week or two already that we've been saying, Phantom IL stint just for the fact because they don't have, they might need them in case someone else gets hurt, blah, 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 blah. But honestly, after yesterday's performance, if they did DFA him, I wouldn't be surprised, just for the simple fact, like, he's not competitive. It's yesterday was just like, you knew he was going to give up runs. It wasn't even a matter of like anything else. And I guess the benefit from the last two games was that he went 6 innings and 5 innings respectively, but he still gave up, 8 hits, 7 hits, 6 runs, 5 runs, not striking out anybody. But yesterday was just like, honestly, I don't know how he threw a scoreless inning in there. And, Ellie De La Cruz hit a baseball, destroyed a baseball. And you knew that was going to happen. You just had to hope that nobody was on base. Unfortunately, somebody was on base when it happened. So it's a matter of, we've talked about this a few times on when you're a pitcher, you can get away with a decent amount. You can get away with making mistakes. You can get away with leaving pitches, over the plate in the zone, because guys aren't going to hit every single mistake. But with Syndergaard, I mean, he's not getting lucky. Nobody's really missing mistakes. And yeah, it's just not good at all. And like I said, not competitive. And other than the simple fact of the last couple times the Dodgers needed him to go deeper into this game, they could get away with it a little bit. The last couple games they needed him, so that he just kept pitching. But yeah, if he would have kept pitching, they probably would have scored 10 runs off him. And you feel bad for the guy, because after every game, he looks dejected. He looks, on the verge of tears. He looks like somebody that knows he's a shell of himself and knows that his time with the team is coming. It could be coming up. I don't know his time in the league. Like, potentially, if he never adds something to his fastball or has sharper bite on his off-speed pitches, like, he could be out of the league at some point in this year or next year. Which you're not rooting for that for him. I mean, I like Noah Syndergaard, and for him to just look like so sad after every game is not fun for us. But not feeling bad in the sense of the Dodgers do have to do something, because now they are in a division race right now. It's only June 8th, but they're in a division race. The Diamondbacks are a couple games up on them now. The Giants are closer to the Dodgers than they were before. The Padres aren't quite there, but that their top of the lineup might figure it out at some point, and they're going to go on a little run. So the Dodgers can't afford to put out, non-competitive starters every 5th day, just for the simple fact of, needing innings. At this point, with Kershaw and Gonsolin and, Bobby Miller, and then Julio's coming back, and then Michael Grove, and then you got Gavin Stone, and then, you got other guys down there that can give you innings that are more competitive than this. And, we saw that yesterday with Robertson. Robertson might not look that good every single time out, but that's better than what, Syndergaard is giving him. So it's, sad. Not every deal works out for the Dodgers. And especially, when it comes to pitchers, every time you think of a pitcher coming to the Dodgers, that they're going to be better than they were more than likely before, especially if they had struggled a little bit before. But this just hasn't happened with Syndergaard. And, it's a matter of, he's talked about it, that there's something. His body obviously is letting him down in a certain extent. He can't throw 100 anymore. He thinks that he might be able to unlock it with some help mentally. We talked about him the article about him using a hypnotist and him thinking that it's, mechanics, and that he's somehow not, fully on board or fully comfortable, and his mechanics are off, which causes him not to be able to throw like he used to. And yeah, I don't think the Dodgers aren't in a spot to have to wait for that, or to be able to wait for that, or to be able to continue to throw him out there, giving up, 6, 7 hits a game and 5, 6, 7 runs a game. They can't wait for that anymore. And I think it's if it is the injured list stint that happens, I think that's out of respect for him that the Dodgers are going to do that, and out of the slimmer glimmer, slight hope that maybe he takes a month off and something does happen where he can be a competitive, fifth starter. I guess that's possible, but right now it doesn't seem that way. It didn't look that way yesterday. It just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just not good, and he's not good, and hasn't gotten any better, and he's not getting lucky. Like, he's not getting lucky either. So, like, if it was a matter of, okay, he's blah blah blah, his exit out, he's giving up 10 balls that were hit over 100 miles an hour, but like 6 of them were caught. All right, that's luck. He's not even looking into anything. It's just a matter of non-competitive, and that's where it's come to for Noah Syndergaard. So he'll go on the injured list. Hopefully, Dodgers get Julio back, and they'll run out the rotation that I mentioned. Julio, Gonsolin, Kershaw, Bobby Miller, Michael Grove, Gavin Stone will work on what he needs to work on down there. He'll be probably next man up. You would imagine that if those guys can hold it down until into July, that there might be some reinforcements on the way in terms of starting pitching and or relievers, and that'll help the entire pitching staff as a whole. And yeah, I mean, that's what it is, and that's what it's come down to. It didn't work out, and those things happen sometime. JD Martinez has worked out for the Dodgers and been a very good signing. Noah Syndergaard has not, and has not been a good signing. And, you can't know that, especially with Syndergaard, because, like, if he would have just been who he was last year, the Dodgers would have taken that at this point. Last year, Syndergaard, I think, finished with an ERA under 4. Once he got traded to the Phillies, he wasn't really a starter as much, but he still gave them some competitive innings. He had a 3.83, 15 starts, 3.83 ERA with the Angels last year, 10 games, 9 starts with the 4.12 ERA with the Phillies. I think he went 4 innings in one of the playoff games for them. He was a reliever some of the other games. Like, that's competitive. That's a number 4 starter or number 5 starter quality. But he's not at that at all. He's almost double. His ERA is in the 7s. Through 12 starts, and his last 3 starts have been his worst starts, or some of his worst starts. I think the Dodgers have scored at least 5 runs in 8 of his starts, I want to say I read, and Syndergaard only has 1 win to show for it. Wins don't really matter too much, but the fact that the Dodgers scoring 5 runs and he wasn't even in line for the win just shows that he's giving up a lot of runs, because there's the bullpen does give up runs, but he's been giving up a lot of runs. So, Syndergaard, if we ever see you again in a Dodger uniform on the mound, that's probably a good thing, or it could be a bad thing, I guess. It could be a really bad thing, or it could be a good thing. No in between. So, and if not, I wish you well in your endeavors the rest of the way. So, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to become an everydayer by listening every day. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell people about us if they need a Dodger podcast in their life, because we're here every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. You can listen to us on SiriusXM or the SXM app if you search Locked On Dodgers, which is also how you can listen to the Dodgers home broadcast for any game if you can't watch. SiriusXM, SXM app, search Dodgers, and you can listen to the home broadcast for every game. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent's91. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, tell your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.